On the surface, Mythic Quest Raven's Banquet is a modern-day workplace comedy that looks at the fictional massive multiplayer online role-playing game Mythic Quest. But underneath that, the show touches on some topical gaming industry issues such as time pressure and female representation. But above all else, offers an in-depth look at the struggles of being creative, collaborating with others, and how to define success. All of which is best shown by the 5th episode, A Dark Quiet Death, which is an unsettlingly relatable love letter to artistic vision, creativity, and its emotional cost. Starring Jake Johnson and Kristen Milotti as Doc and Bean, A Dark Quiet Death shows the story of 2 video game developers from their very first meeting right through to what could be their last. Jumping forward in time every scene or two, the episode shows how their creative visions and definitions of success change over time, along with their willingness to compromise that vision, and unfortunately the decline of their relationship. As if the episode wasn't enough, the icing on the cake to a truly amazing standalone episode of television is that if you go to darkquietdeath.com, you can actually play Doc and Bean's original game that started it all. Starting in 1993, the two meet in a video game store, where Bean complains that there isn't any good games. Doc eventually explains that he produces video games, and asks why she doesn't just develop the type of game that she wants to play. The next scene shows the two in 1995, pitching their game A Dark Quiet Death to a video game publisher for further funding. Despite A Dark Quiet Death being a gritty and serious game where you can't kill the enemy, who is intended to be a metaphor for life, its relentless nature and inevitability, the publisher, who usually makes games like Kitten Bonsai and Rockin' Boppin' Chicken, offers the two hundreds of thousands of dollars for investment. The story then jumps again to 1996, where Doc and Bean are now married and looking for a studio, as they are developing A Dark Quiet Death 2. But as the studio gets up and running and the corporation behind the scenes become more involved, the cracks start to show. Focus testing says that people want to be able to kill the monsters, which Bean is adamant can never happen, although Doc is a little more open as he believes it will help sell the game and let the franchise grow. Eventually Bean compromises as well, and the game quickly deteriorates into a standard action game filled with weapons. In A Dark Quiet Death 2, the torch, which was originally the only thing that could fend off the creatures in the first game, is reduced to a laser sight for a gun, the perfect visualization of what has happened to the game's original premise. A Dark Quiet Death 2 has now become everything that the first game was developed to go against. The next scene showed Doc and Bean's arguments at how the game and their respective creative vision has changed, and how neither one is getting what they want from the game, or perhaps each other. Shifting to 2000, Doc and Bean are now divorced, and Doc is dating Tiffany Winters, the star of the movie adaptation of A Dark Quiet Death, the trailer for which is in complete daylight, filled with noise, and shows Winters' character Ash Light killing every single monster she sees. Doc has embraced a now very different franchise and its resultant success, despite it no longer representing anything that the first game stood for. But 6 years later in 2006, as the studio wants to add in a CGI animated character named Roscoe to make the franchise more appealing to kids, and another push for there to be an ending where the player can kill, Doc realizes how far from his original vision he has fallen. He explains that the studio needs to pick between this direction for the franchise and him, with no prizes for guessing who they go with. The final scene shows Doc in the video game store from the beginning, looking through an array of terrible video games. Bean arrives returning a rental for her kids, and the two share an emotion-filled moment where the pain of what happened is still fresh for both of them. Doc apologizes, and Bean asks why Doc doesn't just make the sort of game he wants to play himself. And the episode ends as Doc finds a copy of A Dark Quiet Death, whilst thinking back to the early days of creating the game with Bean. The final moments are punctuated more than ever with an expert use of score and licensed music, both of which push the episode to the next level. The music manages to bring a sense of joy to the early scenes of success and romance with Doc and Bean, but those same songs and music, which are repeated later in the episode, bring a sad notion of what was lost at the very end. The underlying message of A Dark Quiet Death centers around a beautifully morbid and yet wholly relatable story of creativity, the difficulties that come with it, and how people change with success. On the idea of success, the easy version of the story would be to show Johnson's Doc as the bad guy who sells out. But instead, an important part of the story is that Doc never truly sells out as an individual. It's more like him losing his way creatively. He doesn't become arrogant, self-obsessed, and is never really in the wrong. He explains to Bean that it's just as much his game as it is hers, and that him wanting the franchise to adapt and evolve isn't a bad thing. On the other side of that coin, Bean loses her game but never her vision. The sequel to her game evolved into a generic action-filled game that was ultimately everything she and Doc created the original game to oppose. She also loses her relationship with Doc, and that is where the real magic of A Dark Quiet Death really comes through. It's not black and white, and in the creative process there is usually shades of grey. Neither is wholly wrong, but neither is fully right, something which has helped significantly by jumping between years and seeing small parts of their story, so neither becomes the villain. The episode comes to a head with a notion of what can be classed as success. Doc embraces the franchise losing its original message, and thus enables the series to become a huge game and movie enterprise. But he eventually realises that this success wasn't worth giving up what the game was supposed to be and his relationship with Bean. At the end he says he's done, and it becomes clear how much the compromise has broken him as a person, even if he hadn't realised it himself. It's a somber and sad episode that feels all too real to anyone that's tried to create something and had to compromise to get it finished, or has changed what it was always supposed to be simply for success. The end of the episode is where the message really hits home. The final symbolic scene with Doc and Bean together in the store where they first met, and even got the nicknames Doc and Bean, is filled with the emotion of everything that the two have lost and everything that they could have had. As a viewer, you want the two to kiss, apologise for what happened, and end on a happy note. There's even a moment where you consider Bean mentioning she has children could be a joke and part of her dark sense of humour to throw Doc off, and at the last moment she'll tell him that she's kidding and ask if he wants to go make a new game together. But that wouldn't work for the story that the episode tells. Doc and Bean fell out over losing the message of their game, which was meant to symbolise the inevitability and darkness of real life. And in real life people break up, they fall out, and they move on and make new lives. And so if the episode pivoted at the last moment, it would certainly make for a happier episode of TV, but a much less impactful and memorable one. All in all, Mythic Quest is a great show. It's funny and walks the line between topical, relatable, and outright silly. But the 5th episode, A Dark Quiet Death, is an unsettlingly relatable love letter to artistic vision, creativity, and the loss of it. In one 30-minute episode, the level of development on Doc and Bean, and how much the episode makes the audience care about them, their work, and relationship is a masterclass.